I'm just going to take a look first at some instructions that I have here. So we can use Photopea or Photoshop if we have it. I'm going to use Photopea because that's what it's free and easy and accessible. I think I'm going to go for this. This is the dimensions of the document that we're actually going to create, and I can see here that I have to make it 72 dpi, and there's some themes for inspiration. I could use something from my studio practice. I think I'll go with birds with arms for the first one, and I'll kind of cheat. So let's go over to Photopea and look for 1280 by 720. So if I go to File and New, or I can click on New Project, so File and New. And then we have some presets here. So these are like presets for print. And you can see that if I click on an A4 page, it gives me the dimensions for A4, which is 21 and 29.7 centimeters. It sets the DPI to 300. Don't really need to know what that is at the moment, but you'll see DPI 300 for print stuff. And you'll see DPI 72 for screens. So look, if I go to screen and I see HD 1280 by 720, when I click on this, it automatically changes all of this to, so we've got 1280 width, 720 height. It's in pixels now rather than centimeters, and it's set to 72 dpi. So the DPI, you get more familiar with that. It's basically the quality of the image. So if you're printing something, if I print A4, it's into centimeters and it's at 300 dpi, and it basically just needs an awful lot more quality or pixel density in the image. But we're just making stuff from screen, so I can click on screen, I can click on this preset, it sets up everything to me. If I want a different background, it'll default to white, but if I wanted a different background, I could go for black, transparent, or custom. Maybe this one I will actually go with custom, and I'll click on the little white tile there, and I might pick out maybe I'll go for something that's kind of very pale, and kind of pale yellow. Yeah, that's okay. And then click on create. Okay, so here I am inside of my new project.psd, and this is my 1280 by 720 document. And I always use keyboard shortcuts to make things faster for myself. I'm just used to them. If I click on view and I come down to this fit the area, I can see the keyboard shortcut for is Control and 0. And basically if I click on that, it just zooms me in to the exact dimensions that I'm working with, just to make my work area a little bit more visible and easy to see. If you look there and go to view and it says zoom in is Control and plus, and zoom out is Control and minus. So I'll give those a try. If I press Control and minus, so I hold down the Control key, which is in the bottom left-hand corner of my keypad, and I just keep pressing minus, it just zooms me out. If I hold down Control and I just keep pressing plus, it'll zoom me in. And if I press Control and 0, it'll do the fit to screen thing for me. So those are two keyboard shortcuts that I use quite a lot, or three I should say. So it's Control and plus, Control and minus, Control and 0. If you are on a Mac, I'm on a PC here, a Windows PC. So if you're on a Mac, it's Command and minus. So it's one of those little buttons that's to the left of your keypad. So just have a look for those and just hold them down and give them a try until you figure out which one does which. So this is going to be my page. So it's a digital collage. So this is like me working on a base page. And I said I was going to do the easiest way first. So I can kind of cheat at collage and I can get some kind of ready-made cut-out images. So I grabbed this one online earlier. This is an image of an arm, and I'm looking for images that are already transparent. So it just has the subject of the arm, and then this checkerboard effect in the background is actually transparent pixels. So that indicates transparent pixels. So basically this image is just the arm with the background removed, which is kind of like getting a pre-made collage piece. So somebody else has actually already cut this out for me. So all I need to do is actually save this. And I have that done already. I just dragged it down to my desktop. I'll just go to my desktop here. And I've got this image here. So actually I'll just delete it and show you how I got that to my desktop as well. So I'll just delete that. I can make this window a little bit smaller. And if I have the arm picture that I want, I can literally just left click and drag it over onto my desktop, and that will save as a file there. So on my desktop, I've now got my my image of an arm, and you can see it against the picture here I have on my desktop. You can actually already see that it's transparent. So how did I actually find transparent pictures of arms? So I'm going to maximize my window here again. So I'm on google.com, and I've come into the images tab here. So I'm actually searching for images. So if I search for images, I get lots of pictures of arms, and I can see from the results that these aren't already transparent. I'd have to go and cut these out, which we will do later. We can learn that skill. But if you want the easiest way, so if you're in the images tab searching for arms here, and you click on tools, this little pop down comes here as well. So it kind of gives you, like, you can search for forearm, tattoo, hand, shoulder, clip art, bent, transparent, and that's actually the one that we want. So if you don't see transparent in that list, come down to color and just expand down color and tell Google that you want transparent pictures of arms. So when I click on this, it will go off, and there's the image that we got earlier, the picture of the arm. And then there's lots of other ones. So I guess we'll get a robot arm, maybe. If I click on this, it should expand, and I can see that it does have the nice checkerboard thing, so it has something transparent. So I'll put this one on my desktop as well. So I'm just going to drag that from there and save it onto my desktop. So there you can see I have two pictures of arms now, so we can use both of these. I can close this, I don't need that. I'll just maximize my window. The other way of doing that, I think, if we just right click on this image and save image as. So if you didn't want to drag it down to your desktop, you can right click on it and save image as, and then it will give you the option to save it. Now I already have it saved on my desktop, so it's automatically adding in an increment to the number just at the end of the file name. So if I click on save, it's going to save down two of them. So there's the other one. So this is basically just a copy of the same file twice. So I need a bird. Okay, so I'm going with this theme from the instructions here, birds with arms. So if I go into Google search, and now I'm going to type in bird and see what I get. So these are all pictures of birds, but they've all got backgrounds, which could be fine. But I'm gonna try and get a chopped out image, because we have transparent pictures of arms, so we could put those on. But I'm going to go to the tools again and click on color and say transparent. So now I need a transparent picture of a bird. But which bird do I want? So some of them are transparent, some of them aren't. It's not always an exact science. Maybe this one. Hopefully if I click on this, it will give me a transparent pixel. Okay, so that looks like it has transparencies in it. So I can right click on this one. Or if you're on a Mac, you'll control click. So it's that same button that's in the bottom left-hand corner of your keypad. There's about 2 or 3 of them there, so just try and see which one works. So right click on a Windows machine, but if you're on a Mac, you control click to right click. So I'll save this image as. And now I've got bird v1 PNG. Okay, so I'll just click on save. And that's downloading now. So there's my bird file. So now I have one bird and I've got 2 arms. And this one, I don't need this anymore because it's a copy of that one. So I'll just click on that and press delete on my keypad. So now I've got a chop out of a bird and 2 different arms that I might want to use. So I need to bring those into Photopea. I need to get them into my document. So there's lots of different ways of doing that. So one way is to go file and place. So open and place. So file, open and place. And if I click on that and then I go to my desktop, which is here. So I click on bird 1. So let's bring our bird in and click on open. So sometimes Photopea does this. So I can see on my layers palette over here that bird has gone in there, but it's sitting behind my background. I've encountered this a few times. It's a little bit of a bug thing. So whenever you file and place, let's deal with this part first. So we can see that the file has gone in. So you can either cancel it or accept it. So we'll just confirm that we did want to place that in there. And then I'll take a look at my layers palette. And if for some reason I don't actually see my layers palette, your setup might look like this. It's this button here. And the layers palette you'll get very familiar with because it's the one that we use all the time. So if I click on that button, it will expand out the layers palette. Alternatively, if I don't see the layers palette, I can go to Window and just make sure that layers is turned on so it expands out. So our layers palette is basically a stack of layers. So they all sit one on top of each other, and background should always be at the bottom. So if I grab background here, I'm going to left click and hold on the background layer, and I'm going to move my mouse down and I drag that below, and you can see that little line that pops up there. So there's a line there, and I just drop it below bird, and then boom, suddenly I have a bird. Okay, so now I have a bird and I have a background, and I have my layers in the right order, and I can see my layers palette there. So now I want to use my move tool. So I'm moving this around with the move tool. And the move tool is the default one over here on the left. So we've got lots of tools running down the left here, and they all do different things and they all have different options. So the options for any tool are always along the top bar here. So if I click on this tool, I'll get the options for that tool. If I click on here, I'll get different options for that. They all do different complicated things. But the move tool is the one I want. And there is a little bit of a setup on the move tool initially. So you just need to make sure that when you select the move tool here, that auto select is turned on. So you can see the difference with auto select. So on the layers palette, the current selected layer is bird because it's been highlighted. And you can see the background is not highlighted. If I left click here on the background, nothing's happening over here. So if I turn on auto select, and you just want to make sure that that's on by default. Now when I left click, it will deselect bird, but it won't select the background until we actually click it, but because the background layer is locked. But this will become more apparent as we add more layers into it. So the setup for this is you always want auto select turned on, and you always want it to set to layer initially. And this is the other important one. You want transform controls turned on. So like if I click on the bird, we see that the bird layer has been selected. But if I'll just click away, if I turn on transform controls, and now I click on the bird, now we get these anchor points popping up, and they're really handy and useful for us because we can left click and drag to move stuff, but then when we come up into the corner of these things, it gives us the option to resize things. So if I click on that, and then I can move him, I can resize him to whatever size I want to be. So maybe I'll make him just a tiny little bit bigger, and I'll push him over to the left hand side here. And whenever you resize, just like when we file and placed, it gives you this little option up here. It'll ask you to cancel the changes or accept the changes. So once you're resizing and you're finished resizing, you just click on confirm, and then that will allow us to resize our bird. If you wanted to as well, if I move my cursor just beyond the anchor point in the corner that allows us to resize, if I go that way and click on it, it'll give me the option here then to rotate it around. So if I move this down a little bit and I position my cursor there until I get that bendy arrow, I can left click and drag to rotate it. So I'm actually going to cancel those changes because I don't want to rotate it. So I'm going to click on cancel. So now I have a background and a bird. It's time to start bringing in our arms because our move tool is all set up as we want it. Auto select is turned on, it's set to layer, and transform controls are there. We'll learn about the rest of these options later. So I'm going to go back into File, Open and Place, and put in an arm. So I'm going to use this arm and select that one and click on open. And it's done that thing again where it's placed it behind the background for some reason. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the tick, just to confirm that that's put in there. And then I'll grab this layer in the layers palette. And remember, if I don't see the layers palette, I can click on the layers palette button to expand it out, or I can go to window and layers. And then I'm going to grab my arm and I'm going to drag it upwards so it's on top of everything else. So now we've got a little arm over here. So maybe I'll actually move my bird back, but we can see that we've got more layers now: background, bird, and arm. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to rename the layers. So you have that option. Generally it just pulls in the file name here. But if you're in the layers palette and you double click on the actual name of the layer, it will give you the option to change it. So I'm going to click on arm and just hit return on my keypad, and that changes this. So it actually really matters where you double click on the layer as well, because you can see there, if I click here, it's going to turn the visibility of the layer on and off. If I double click here, it's going to open up the file in a different window. I don't want that, so I'm going to click on close and go back to this. If I double click over here on a blank space, it's going to give me layer style options. It's kind of confusing, but you have to double click on the actual name of the layer. So if I do that, it'll open up this, and I can just rename that to bird. I'm going to call it birdie. So now I have my move tool selected, and I can click on the bird to select that layer. I can click on the arm to select that layer. So let's bring our bird back into the middle by left clicking, dragging, and holding. So now I will position this somewhere over here, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. So I'll come out to the transform controls and click on them to get the dimensions of this, and then I'll just make it that just a tiny bit smaller, and then click on this, the tick, to accept that, and then position that where it needs to be. I guess I could, is my arm, my other arm, my robot arm, points in the other direction. So if I wanted to, I could bring in that arm. So I'm going to go File and Open in Place again. And I'll select the robot arm this time. So give me my robot arm, Open in Place. Where will it end up in our layers palette? Thank you, Canvas, or Photopea, for putting it all the way at the back. So I'll click on the tick, making things difficult for me, and I'll drag that up there. Okay, now I have a robot arm. I'm not loving the robot arm, but we'll put it in anyway, and then I'll probably get rid of it and swap it out for another version of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is click up there in the corner of the transform controls to start resizing this. I left click and hold and drag until it's down to the size I want, and then I position it where I want it to be, so something like that, and then click on the tick. And that is essentially my collage. So I took some ready-made PNGs. So I'll save this first, and then I will make some changes. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to save two files here. So, and you'll see the difference. So first of all, we'll save it as a PSD. So I'm going to File and save this as PSD. I'm going to save it onto my desktop, and I'm going to call it bird1, bird-1. And you can see it's going to save as file type PSD. Don't need to know what a PSD is at this stage. I'm just going to save it as a PSD. And then I'll go to File, and instead of Save as PSD, I'll come to Export as a JPEG. So I'll click on JPEG. It gives me lots of different options. I'll leave it as bird1, that's fine. JPEG, I'm not going to change any of these things because everything's fine. It's all in the same size that we want. It's the height, it's pixels. Quality, you can change it if you want, it doesn't matter. I click on Save. So now I've saved that as a PSD and a JPEG. If I go out to my desktop, I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut on the Windows. I press Windows and D on my keypad, which just shows me my desktop. we can see over here that I have bird1, which is my JPEG, and I have bird1, which is my PSD. So the difference with this is the file type. So our JPEG, if I double click on this, is basically just a flattened image. So it just opens up in my photo app here, and this is all just one flat image. The difference between a PSD and a JPEG is that the PSD saves all your layers. And you can see that my PSD file has this Photoshop symbol. That's because PSD is the native file format for Photoshop. Photoshop opens PSD files the same way that doc files or docx files are opened by Word. So if I actually open this, it's going to actually open up in Photoshop. I can open it in Photopea, I can open it in Photoshop, I can open any other program that can read a PSD file, and it should contain all of my layers. So I am currently subscribed to Photoshop. I get that through the college. There's a student version of Photoshop that gives you access, or it's the student version of the Adobe Creative Suite that gives you access to, I think, the essential ones. So it'd be Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. And I think that might be around €20 a month. But Photopea is perfect for us at the moment because it's mostly free with ads, and you can pay to get rid of the ads if you wanted to. So Photoshop, you can see, is a chunky program. It takes a while for it to load up. It's just loaded here on my other screen. So I'll just drag this back over to here. So now you can see I'm inside Photoshop now. I'm not inside Photopea, but you can see that it still has all the layers, and I can continue to edit that image inside of Photoshop. And I can move the layers around, I can change them, I can do all that. The difference between that and a JPEG is that your JPEG is now just all flattened. It doesn't contain any layers whatsoever. I think for college purposes, you can submit a PSD or a JPEG. It'd be actually great if you submit both, because we can see your JPEG, you know how to make a JPEG, and if we see your PSD, we can have a look at the layers that are in your file, which is really good. So I'm going to continue working on my collage, but I'm not going to do it in Photoshop. I'm going to close Photoshop now. That was just to show you that a PSD file opens in Photoshop. I'll close my JPEG, and I'll come back to my birdie. So if I click on this, I've decided that I don't like the robot arm. So I'm going to click on this layer, and it'll highlight because I've got auto layer select turned on my move tool. And I can delete this. I can either press the delete key on my keyboard, which will just remove it, or I'm just going to bring that back, going to edit and undo. The other way to delete a layer is you can click on the layer to highlight it. So if I click on shoulder transparent, and in the layers palette, if I click on the delete key, it'll throw that in the bin. Again, I can go to edit and undo just to bring that back. And then the other way to delete the arm is if I click on it, and I can just drag it to the trash as well. So I can left click and drag it and drop it in the trash. So there's always about 4 or 5 different ways of doing anything in Photopea. So like if I wanted to go to edit and undo that, I should just be able to actually use a keyboard shortcut by pressing Control and Z, which is the keyboard shortcut. And it's so good to learn keyboard shortcuts because they make you so fast. So like obviously the quickest way to delete this is click on it and press delete on my keypad. Gone. So what I want to do here is I actually want to use 2 of these arms because I like this kind of strength thing coming out from the parrot. So what I need to do is I need to make a copy of this layer, and I need to flip it around. So I have a couple of different options. I could literally go to File, Open and Place, and I can put in another version of it. So I'll just grab the exact same file again and click on Open. And it sticks another one in. It's gone in there behind our background. So we'll click on the tick, and I'll drag that to the top of my layer stack so I can actually see it. And then I can move it around and rotate it. Now you'll see immediately that the arm is a different size because this one we placed it in and we resized it. So what I want to do with this one is basically resize it. So I'll click here, I'll left click, and then it will allow me to resize. I'll just bring it down. It doesn't have to be exact, it's a collage. And then I'll click on the tick to say I'm happy with that size. And now I need to flip this layer around. So I need to point in the other way. So when I have the layer selected, I made this mistake already where I went to image and transform and flip horizontal. And this thing flipped the entire image for me. I was like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. So I'll go to edit and undo that. What I want to do is just flip this particular layer. So instead of going to image and transform, I'll go to edit and transform. So this just looks at the layer. So there's lots of options in here. And what I want to do is I want to flip it horizontally. So when I click on that, boom, it's there. So let's position that there. And this time I actually need the bird in front of these guys. So, or do I? I don't know, let's see what it looks better. I'll position this one. It kind of looks normal enough, I guess. I just want to see what this looks like if I bring the bird on top. Maybe I'll leave the bird below. That seems okay. So now I have another version of my birdie. Now I want to put a hat on him. Yes, I do want a hat. I want a nice little hat for my birdie. So I'm going to come back into Google. I'm going to search for, is it a fedora? A fedora hat? Yes, a fedora hat with a flower maybe? Okay, we're getting very specific here. And we might not have a fedora hat with a transparency. So let's just see what we get anyway. So I'll click on tools. I'll go to color and transparent. The internet's got to have, oh, hello. It's got to have a nice PNG file. Oh, this one looks nice as well. I like the little, can't decide. So many oh, that's nice. Is it a PNG though? I don't know if this one's actually a PNG with transparency. I'll just drag it to my desktop to find out, or I'll right click and say save image as, because they're not always a, no, it's an AVIF file. So these are new file types that are popping up. I want a PNG. Well, I'll see what we get. AVIF. It's a weird file type. So you've heard of JPEGs, you've heard of GIFs. PNGs are very popular, but there's new file types coming out all the time. So I'll just see what this does. So I'll save it to the desktop anyway. This is it downloading over here. It doesn't, I can lie, you can see that it's not transparent. There's no transparency there. So the internet isn't always our friends when it comes to these things. So we click on this. Oh, okay, this one has transparency, fine. So I'll right click on that and say save image as. Actually, I could probably get even lazier. If I just right click on that and say copy image, it'll put it on my paste board and I should just be able to paste it in here. So edit and paste. Allow Photopea, it wants to see my clipboard, allow that. And boom, that was even easier. Didn't even just save the file. So let's give this guy a nice little hat. And then we'll position it there and boom. So that is my more complicated collage. Okay, I kind of want to give him a little bit of a background here as well. So I'm actually just going to use the shape tool. Where's my shape tool? My shape tool is here. So if I click on the rectangle shape, this allows me to draw a rectangle by left clicking and dragging. And you can see it's drawn in a shape layer over there. And I can click on the move tool and I can move that around and I can reorder it like any other layer if it goes behind the arm. But I actually want a circle. So I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to press delete. I want a circle. So any of these tools on the left that have a little arrow in the bottom right hand corner, it means that there's other options in there. Options. So if I left click and hold on the tool, it gives me the option for an ellipse. So I'll get this and I'll draw, left click and drag to draw an ellipse, which is an oval shape. but I want a nice perfect circle. So you have to use your keyboard with this one. So you have to hold down Shift as you left click and drag to draw. And it doesn't matter if you can't get it as big as you want it at the start, just draw any circle and you can resize it. So now I let go of my mouse, I let go of Shift. So I have a circle. So I can click on the circle and I can move it around and I can position it. I'm going to resize it ever so slightly. So I'm going to click on this to resize, left click and drag. Again, I'm going to use another keyboard shortcut here. You can see that as I'm left clicking up in the top left hand corner, it gets bigger that way. But if I resize and I hold down the Alt key, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, now you see it starts getting bigger from the center. And that's kind of what I want. So I'm going to go to about there. So I'm going to let go of my left mouse, and now I'm going to let go of my Alt key, and I'm going to click on the tick. And this is always practice. You need to kind of get used to, because things will start jumping around and you won't understand why it's not resizing the right way. But this now, I'm going to position this one, this shape, I'm going to put that all the way behind my birdie. And I'm going to double click there and I'm going to rename that to circle. Now I need to change the color of the circle. So to do that, I could do that in two ways. So when I have the circle selected, so the layer is turned on, I've clicked on my circle and I have that selected, I can come back to the shape tool. If I click on that, remember I said the options up here for change every time you change your tool. If I click on that, it's going to give me the option up here. You can see that fill is black and stroke is set to nothing. So ignore stroke for the moment, we don't need that. Your stroke should be having this red X on the white circle, which basically means there's no stroke on it. So the fill, it gives you some fill colors here that you can pick from. So if I want to go with cyan, it's a bit too bright for me though. And the yellow, it's too bright, too bright. What does the pink look like? I like the pink. But you can see that this box here is changing every time I click on one of these preset colors. So if you click on this box here, this is actually the color selector. And then you can select any color that you want. So I kind of do want it to be kind of orangey, but I want it to be, or yellowy, maybe a little bit more orange there. I want it to be kind of muted. So it looks like the background, but it's just a bit of a difference. So I'm going to click on OK. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to click away into this dead space here just to see. Yes, here we go. There's a nice birdie. Or maybe actually I should do something with the pink in here, because the green is a little bit too close to his feathers. So I did say that there was more than one way of coloring the circle. So I could go back into the circle tool and I could get the fill color, and I can change the fill color to a pink or purple. But the easier, quicker way of doing that is to actually just double click on this icon for your shape layer. So if I double click on this, it'll just bring up the color picker. And the amazing thing about the color picker is when it's open, if you move into your image, if I click on this yellow part of his feathers, it will select that pixel. If I click on the green part of his feathers, it'll select the color of that pixel. If I click on the arm, it's going for a skin tone. If I click somewhere up here in the flower, it gives me the pink that I wanted. So I'm extracting the pink. And you know, there's a couple of different tones of pink in there, because there's tones and highlights in there. So just keep clicking around until you get something that really wants. And if you want to adjust it slightly, you can like go, there, that's the perfect pink. And click on OK. And close my layers palette just to see. Click on my move tool and click away from my canvas. Press Control and minus to zoom out and go, yes, I like my collage. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to save it as a PSD. So this is my more complicated version, and I go to Bird 2. I'll save this as Bird 2. And then I will also go to File and export as a JPEG. And then it gives me the options for my JPEG. Bird 2 is fine, JPEG, the right size, it's pixels, 70 quality is fine, don't need to worry about any of those settings. I click on Save. And then it asks me to confirm, did I know that for $5 a month you can remove the ads on the right hand side and support Photopea? I did know that, but I haven't got $5 a month, so I'm going to close that and say thank you, Photopea. Sometimes your ad blocker will actually work over here if you have one, like I do. So there's my collage. So I have bird 1 and bird 1. I'm going to move these images out of the way. I'll actually delete this one because it's that weird file format and I don't need the shoulder one anymore. So I just have my source images. We don't have to upload these or anything. And I've got bird 2 and I've got my bird 2 PSD here as well. Great.